Hi everyone, it's Michelle from Considering Grace. Today I'm working in Isaiah chapter 61, verse 3, and I'm using Versamark ink, which is a clear embossing ink, and I'm using Recollections embossing powder in the color Snow. And I've got my acrylic block there because I'm going to be doing some stamping. And before you wonder what I'm doing here, the stamps that I'm using is a letter set that I have, and for some reason the plastic or the acrylic that's around each letter is really thick, and so if you put all the letters onto the acrylic block at once, it actually makes a really big space in between each letter, and it makes the word look really not so good. So I decided to take on the challenge of putting on each letter one by one, which was actually a lot harder than I thought it would be. It turns out that the paper I chose for my background paper is a little bit porous, and so it kind of soaked up some of the wetness of the ink, making it harder to see the shine when I went to put down the next letter, because it's just clear, right? So it made it a bit of a challenge, and I'm just hoping that I'm getting it right. And in the end, I don't think I did too bad. So now I'm just sprinkling on some of the embossing powder. This is the messy part, but if you take your time and are careful, it doesn't have to be too messy. I know some people hate working with embossing powder because it can be a big mess. But like I said, if you take your time and don't rush, there's no reason why you need to make a big mess. Having said that, towards the end of the video, I make a big mess, but I think that was just because I was tired. So, as you can see there, I've got the word beauty. And what I'm doing now is I'm taking a tiny paintbrush, and I don't know what kind of brush it's called, what kind of tip it is, but it's got a point on the end of it. And it is a really, really awesome brush to use for embossing because it kind of gets into the tiny little grooves and nooks that might be harder to get at with your finger or with another kind of brush. So you want to get a small brush for sure, just to brush away some of that excess powder that might be on there that you don't want there. So now I'm just taking my heat tool and applying it. Careful not to go too close because you can easily nick where you've put the embossing powder, and that would make a line in it. And you want to not go too long on each letter, just so that you don't burn the paper. So I've gone ahead and gotten the next word on there, and I'm just starting the third word. I haven't taken the heat tool to the word for yet, so that's why it looks a little bit faded. So I'm just going to take a second and read to you a couple of verses around the verse that I'm journaling today. So I'm starting at Isaiah chapter 61, verse 1, and I'm going to verse 3. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me, for the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to comfort the brokenhearted, and to proclaim that captives will be released and prisoners will be freed. He has sent me to tell those who mourn that the time of the Lord's favor has come, and with it, the day of God's anger against their enemies. To all who mourn in Israel, he will give a crown of beauty for ashes, a joyous blessing instead of mourning, festive praise instead of despair. In their righteousness they will be like great oaks that the Lord has planted for his own glory. So I just love that section of verses. I think it says so much about what God has for us and how we have to just be willing to receive the good that he has for us instead of being caught down in the dumps or being caught in a negative mindset. And I find that really encouraging, those verses. So I hope you found them encouraging too. So I'm just taking the brush now to the last word. And I'll be honest with you, I had a lot of trouble with the S on this last word. And a couple of times I've nicked it, and as you can see there, I just decided to brush it all away completely. And I'm just cleaning it up there, and then what I'm going to do is take the stamp again and go in and restamp it. So this is something I didn't know that you could do. I kind of thought that I had wrecked it for good, but actually when I brushed it all the way with the brush, it was clear enough for me to stamp again. And in the end, I ended up doing this a couple of times. I didn't put them all on camera because I didn't want to bore you, but I wasn't happy with the angle of the ES as well, so I ended up taking off the E and the S and restamping them. And I'm so glad that I did, because I wouldn't have been happy with the end result if I hadn't have done that. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm using the color silver for that. I was hoping to use a dark gray, but I didn't have a dark gray. So the word ashes, I wanted to kind of be dark and gloomy. I didn't quite get the effect I wanted with the silver. It's a little bit too pretty for the word ashes than I wanted. But I'm glad that it's a little bit different than the other two words, because then it stands out. So that's kind of what my take is on that. And like I said, I did play with the E and the S quite a bit. And I'm sorry about that screenshot there. Just trying to get in the little areas that I can with the paintbrush. And now I'm just going to take the heat tool to that. I think that's my favorite part, is taking the heat tool to embossing powder and just seeing how it comes out so glossy and shiny. It's fun to watch that happen. I'm sure you agree. So now that I've got that done, I'm taking another stamp of a flower, and I'm stamping this around the page with the clear ink again. And this time I'm going to put clear embossing powder on it. I want the flowers to just be really subtle on this page, so that when you turn the page and move the page, you can see the flowers, but I didn't want them to be as white as like the word beauty, for example. So the thing I didn't realize, or I should have realized, was that when I stamped these flowers on there, I easily lost place of where I put them. So I kind of had to guess where to put the embossing powder, which was not fun. And this is where I make a big mess. So bear with me. And yeah, if you're going to do this on this kind of paper, which is which is scrapbooking paper that you can pick up at Michael's or a scrapbooking store, I would suggest that you just stamp your flower or whatever you're going to stamp and then put the embossing powder on before you move on, because it was really hard to remember where I had stamped them because I stamped so many and I did them random, right? So that's my bit of advice for that. Now, it did take a little bit of time to use the paintbrush to clean in around the flowers, and I had to hold up the paper several times just to see, to get a good view of it. So now I'm just taking the heat tool and going to go over the flowers and just hope that I got the embossing powder where I needed to. And they actually turn out better than I thought they would. So you can see there that it's shiny, but it's not white. And that's the exact effect I was going for. So I'm really happy with that. So yeah, if you have any questions about this process, I'm not an expert in embossing by any means, but I've done it a lot, and I think one of the keys is just to do it and play with it and try different embossing powders to see what kind of effect they get, and also to try different papers. Before I did this one, I tried some embossing on vellum, and that gives a completely different effect too, which is really cool. So yeah, be creative when you're trying this. And here's some pictures for you. And yeah, if you guys have any ideas of anything that you want me to try, please let me know in the questions, or you can email me at michelle@consideringgrace.com. And I hope you guys have an awesome day. Okay, take care and God bless.